Hello, it's John Heaton, and today I thought I'd tackle my favourite Rolling Stones tracks. So, not an easy task, a bit like when I did the Beatles not so long ago. Decided for no good reason, just to do 50. I could have done 30, but it would have been very hard. It was pretty hard doing 50, and there's a lot I left off. And probably some of your favourites are not on here as well. Well, I'm just picking my favourites here, and there are a few well-known songs which didn't make the list, but that doesn't mean they're not great songs. It just means I don't get back to them as often as I do the ones on this list. So I found that the songs were reasonably well spread over their career, but with a particular concentration in the period 1968 to 1973, I noticed, but that's hardly surprising because that is my favourite period of them. And then the Some Girls album from 78 is very well represented here. So I'm not going to hold up the album cover for each track because that could get a bit tedious. So I'll just talk a bit about each track, but I'll whiz through the bottom few and then maybe talk about the top ones a bit more. So at number 50, we've got a track from Sticky Fingers. And it's Can You Hear Me Knocking? I know some of you probably have this a lot higher on your list, and it is a great song, and it's a great one to play loud. I was reading a book the other day which said that the second half of it is a bit superfluous, which I thought was a bit harsh. I could see what they mean, but I think it works well as an extended piece, and just superbly loud guitar from Keith and Mick Taylor on this track. So that was the first of my Sticky Fingers choices. And then number 49, we've got, maybe I will show you the album cover, or maybe I won't. Some Girls, this album from 78. I'll show it to you once and then I won't show it again. So this album I bought it when it came out, which means it has a special place in my heart. 1978, it was only 14. And I just love most of the tracks, and this is my first choice from the album. It's actually the title track, Some Girls, which I found hilarious at the time, still find it pretty funny. I don't think anyone would get away with lyrics like this today, but anyway, this was then. So that was the very effective title track, Some Girls. Now, number 48, we've got, I couldn't find the vinyl in time for this video, so it's from this Emotional Rescue CD, and it's the last track, the Keith track, All About You. I think it's just almost the best song on the album. I think it's glorious and very moving, and heartfelt lyrics. I think he was in the middle of a breakup at the time, seem to remember. But I like the album as well. I was surprised I didn't have too many choices from it on my list, but that's not to say it doesn't work well as an album. And that's the closing number, All About You, sung by Keith. Number 47, we've got a track which did appear on the Through the Past Darkly, or the UK version, I think, You Better Move On, the cover of the Arthur Alexander song. I haven't chosen too many covers on this list, actually, but this was one I couldn't resist because I think it's a glorious song. It did turn up on this live BBC album, but I think the studio version's better. Of course, Arthur Alexander wrote Anna, which the Beatles covered, and also Shot of Rhythm and Blues, which the Beatles also covered. So that was number 47. Well, 46, we've got It's All Over Now, which was a cover. They didn't write this one, but it was a very successful single in 1964, one of their breakthrough songs, and very effective harmony from Keith on the chorus, because I used to love her. But It's All Over Now. Again, play this one loud. I got this originally on the High Tide and Green Grass compilation. 45, we're going to go back to Some Girls with Before They Make Me Run, which Keith wrote as a kind of autobiographical story about how they were chasing him around the place because he was during his heroin period, and he just got off that just before this album, Some Girls, and he's basically talking about getting his act together, going to walk before they make me run. And I saw him do this solo in a concert in Brixton, I think it was, in the late 80s, with his band, Expensive Winos, which was very good. Number 44, again, I couldn't find the vinyl in time, so this is from To You. And I've gone with Slave, the track on side 1, which is built around a really good riff, in the same way that Start Me Up is built on a really good riff, but I prefer this song, and hence it's made the list. I think it's a really groovy song. I don't know if the words mean anything, but it sounds good, and it's good when it's played loud, and good backing vocals. Number 43 is also from the same album, and it's a track on side 2. It's called Heaven, and it's just got this gorgeous guitar. I think this might have even been a kind of outtake track which they never got round to recording from Goat's Head Soup sessions, I seem to remember. Certainly an old song, and kissing and running away is the main lyric, and these kind of dreamy guitars, very effective. Number 42, we're going to go back to Emotional Rescue and the song on side 1, the rocker Let Me Go, which I think is probably the best track on the album. I don't think it was a single, or if it was, it didn't do much. I know She's So Cold was a single. I don't think this one was, could have been. 41, going to go to Exile, and their masterpiece from 1972, the double album, and I'm going to choose Let It Loose, the closer of side 3, which has this lovely build-up on the organ, superbly sung by Mick, and then the female backing vocalists come in towards the end of the song, and it's just with a whole chorus of backing vocalists, very, very uplifting. Then we're going to pick our first track from Goat's Head Soup. This is my deluxe edition from the other year, and I'm going to go with the side 1 track, 100 Years Ago, which I think is kind of one of their forgotten tracks. Not a lot of people talk about it outside the fan base. It's not particularly well known, but I think it's a great song with a great sort of guitar part in it, and it's vintage Stones from this, more or less anything from this period, 68 to 72, 73 is pretty much vintage Stones, and this is a big favourite of mine. Number 39, we're going to go back to Some Girls, the closer on side 1, Lies, where Jagger's basically screaming the lyrics. You dirty Jezebel, why don't you go to hell, and stuff, with very powerful guitar from Keith and Ronnie jointly in the back. I think another one to be played loud, superb. 38, we're going to go to Beggar's Banquet, and I'll just show you the album cover. This is the album cover as it came out. As you probably know, they wanted it to be a picture of a toilet, and I'm glad that the record company actually rejected it, because I think it would have been a terrible cover, but that's just my opinion. But when it did come out as this kind of posh invitation with the songs written in italic on the back, I guess it was a bit similar to the White Album in terms of concept, and so the Stones got accused of copying, but I think it's a very successful album cover as it came out, but that's just my opinion. And I've lost my track. Which track did I choose from there? I chose Parachute Woman from side 1, and some great guitar work from Brian Jones just shortly before he passed away, a few months this album came out. I think he died in the July of the following year, and this album came out beginning of December of 68, I think. And then, so that's a great track. 37, we're going to go back to Sticky Fingers and the track Sway, the second song on side 1, and Jagger does his normal good job of obscuring the words, so you can't really hear what the hell he's talking about, but it sounds pretty captivating. And it's a great band performance, and it's just a sort of lazy beat, and just great drumming from Charlie. Just everything about this track is great. Number 36, I don't have the CD to show you, or the record. It's from Steel Wheels, and again, I've gone with the closing track from Keith, Slipping Away, which I think is, for me, the best song on the album. And it's towards, latter day Stones. Quite often Keith would come up with the strongest track, and maybe that was a sign of their sort of declining quality or something, but on the other hand, Keith wrote some damn good songs, and as a vocalist he's very emotive and successful, so That was a lovely song from Steel Wheels, Slipping Away. And then 35, we're going to go to Undercover from 1983, and I nearly chose the title track. That was Bubbling Under, nearly made the cut because I think it was a brave single tackling all the violence happening in Latin America at the time, but didn't quite make the cut. But I've chosen Too Much Blood, the first track on side 2, which does a glorious job sort of lampooning all the horror movies at the time, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and there's a pretty hilarious video to go with this. Check it out. 34, don't have the record to show you, it's from Between the Buttons, and I nearly chose Backstreet Girl. That nearly made the list. It was Bubbling Under, but I've gone with the final track, Something Happened to Me Yesterday, because I think it's unique in the Stones catalogue in terms of just being completely wacky and sort of hints of Dixon of Dock Green and the lovely horn bit, the solo, and these kind of fantasy words. I think it's a very successful song, and I think that the whole album is one of my favourites actually. 33, going to go with Little Red Rooster, which I again originally had on this album, this High Tide and Green Grass compilation. I love the cover of that and the back cover, and it comes with a poster, and this is a Record Store Day copy on green vinyl, which is very nice. So that was Little Red Rooster, and Heart of Stone is also on that album, and it's a ballad, and they did a string of superb ballads in the mid-60s, and Heart of Stone is just gorgeous. Let It Bleed, my first selection from this album, and I've gone with the title track, Let It Bleed, and although this is a terrible pun on the Beatles' Let It Be, which hadn't actually been released at the time, but had been recorded, so the Stones and the Beatles spent quite a lot of time with each other in the 60s, and inevitably their songs were sometimes influenced by each other, mostly Stones being influenced by the Beatles rather than the other way around. But I think in this period the Stones were the Beatles equal in the late 60s. They were turning out material which was absolutely brilliant and on a par with what the Beatles were doing, and then the Beatles were to split up and the Stones were to just enter their best ever period for the next few years. So that was Let It Bleed. Number 30, we've got Sister Morphine from Sticky Fingers, which is the song about drugs, and I think it's about heroin or morphine, should I say, and just very spooky words about, why has the doctor got no face? And it's based on, I assume, a true experience, and it's got this lovely slide guitar from Mick, or I'm not sure if it's Mick Taylor or Keith playing the slide on that song, but very effective. 29, we're going to go back to Some Girls with Miss You. It's a disco track, but they made that genre their own with this track, and it was a huge hit single, deservedly so. Good video to go with this. Number 28, go back to Sticky Fingers. I've got The Blues, the slower number, second track, side 2, with a lovely organ solo from Billy Preston. 27, we got another brilliant ballad called Lady Jane, which was on the High Tide and Green Grass compilation I just showed you. Beautiful. 26, Respectable from the Some Girls album. Really nice, fast rocker, play it loud. Hilarious words about hanging out with the president and stuff like that. I think it was the President of Canada they were referring to, not the President of the US, because they were quite friendly with Mrs. Trudeau, apparently. Number 25, another track from Exile, from side 2 of Exiles, Torn and Frayed. Again, Jagger makes it hard for you to understand what he's singing about, but if you actually read the lyrics, if you look up the lyrics, they're actually quite an honest reflection of what was happening with Keith at the time. And he was right in the middle of his heroin period and very dependent on that. And Mick was basically, worried about him, and I think that's why he wrote this song. So I think it's very heartfelt. Number 24, go back to Some Girls, and the opening track from side 2, the country and western sort of spoof, Faraway Eyes, with Mick singing it in a kind of southern US accent, very, very amusing. 23, go back to Exile with Loving Cup, the storming closer to side 2 of that album, and Charlie's drum entry when it comes to the chorus, "Give me a little bit of that loving cup," is just brilliant. Moonlight Mile. Another selection from Sticky Fingers. I think I counted no less than, it's a bit of a spoiler, but no less than 8 selections from Sticky Fingers made this list. Moonlight Mile is the closer to side 2 with a lovely string arrangement. And I think Jagger is mostly responsible for this song. I've been reading, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a lovely melody up there with the best. 21, we're going to go back to Beggar's Banquet. And another slow song called No Expectations, second song on side 1 after Sympathy for the Devil. And some lovely guitar work from Brian on this track as well, showing that he could produce the goods, on his day, and unfortunately he was not having too many good days during that period. Number 20, we're going to go back to Sticky Fingers, and it's a big favourite of mine, the country and western song Dead Flowers. I've showed you the album cover already, I won't show it to you again. So lovely harmony from Keith on the chorus, in the US male, and I've read that this song is about heroin, but I don't know. But either way, it's a very enjoyable track. Number 19, go back to Goat's Head Soup with Do 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 brackets Heartbreaker. It's just a great single, and I'm not sure if it did terribly well in the charts. I think it was released as a single, but it's one of their best rockers in my opinion, and pretty high on the list. Number 18 is another track from this album, To You, and I've chosen the last track, Waiting on a Friend, big favourite of mine, and there is a very good video of this with Mick and Keith walking down the street in New York, and I think it was filmed at the same building where Physical Graffiti, the Led Zeppelin album cover, that photo was taken. And so Keith's walking along the street, turns up, says hello to Mick. Then they go into this bar next door, and Charlie and Bill and Ronnie are already in there, I think, and they sort of hang out at the bar, and then they go and play the song at the back, and it was just a lovely video. And this song should have been a huge hit single. Had it been released 10 years earlier, it probably would have been, but maybe their time was a little bit, their popularity was a little bit on the wane by 1980, unfortunately. Or 81 when this song came out. Number 17, another lovely ballad from the mid-60s, As Tears Go By, which Marianne Faithfull successfully covered famously. But this is the original by the Stones, again on that compilation, High Tide and Green Grass, and showing that in the mid-60s they really did come up with a string of gorgeous ballads, and this is probably the best of them. Number 16, another selection from Some Girls. I counted no less than 8 selections from that album as well, so it was joint top along with Sticky Fingers, followed by 6 from Exile, 4 from Beggar's Banquet, and 4 from Let It Bleed. So those were the main albums featured on my list. I haven't even got to the top 15 yet. Number 16 is another track from Some Girls, Beast of Burden, which is I've always loved. I loved it at the time. I love it now. I don't really get tired of the Some Girls album. I could go back to it. I haven't listened to it for a while. I need to do it really. 15, the glorious single with the sitar playing from Brian, Paint It Black, on that compilation, High Tide and Green Grass. Very successful single in every way. Number 14, another ballad, Angie, from Goat's Head Soup. A bit of a tearjerker, this one, with a pretty funny video where they're all playing guitars with roses in the neck of the guitar. That's a very nice video and just a lovely song. And number 13, the big standalone single, not on an album at the time, Honky Tonk Woman. The only reason this isn't right at the top is I think the production lets the song down a tiny bit. I never thought that this track was particularly well produced. Maybe I'm nitpicking, but what a song, and just brilliantly sung by Mick and Keith doing the guitar solo. And they'd only just lost Brian Jones when this single was released, and it was basically a message to the fans saying, well, okay, we've lost Brian, but we're actually going to get better, not worse after this. Number 12, Sympathy for the Devil, going back to Beggar's Banquet, and it's the lead-off track. very controversial song lyrically, and obviously when they performed it at Altamont, it helped fuel the kind of mood in the crowd, and which unfortunately turned ugly, and that guy got stabbed to death, unfortunately, by the Hells Angels. So a very sad ending, but I still think this track is important as a song, and good lyrics about the Kennedys and Jesus and stuff. Don't particularly sympathise with the lyric at all, but it's a pretty powerful song, I can't deny it. Number 11, the song Bitch, lead-off track from side 2, storming rocker, play this one loud, great horns. Number 10, we got Love in Vain, back to Let It Bleed, the second track on side 1 after Gimme Shelter, and just a gorgeous song. I think Brian Jones might be on this track, because I've got my copy tells you who plays on each track. No, he's not actually. Mandolin Ry Cooder, bass Bill, drums Charlie, guitars Keith. So it's all Keith. I thought Brian Jones is playing the auto harp on You've Got the Silver. I don't think he's on any of the other tracks. He's playing percussion on Midnight Rambler. So his contribution very limited on Let It Bleed. But that track, Love in Vain, when the train left the station, just love the words, and it's very sad, but it's very effective. Number 9 is going to be the last selection from Some Girls, and it's the closing track, Shattered, with just really good chunky guitar. Keith and Ronnie working really well together. I particularly love the middle bit where the instrumental bit comes in and they're doing the dun 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 dun, that bit. Just love the words, slagging off New York City, although I think Mick lived there at least, I'm not sure about the others. Bit of a love-hate relationship probably with the city. And number 8, we've got another selection from Goat's Head Soup, Star Star, which would have been called something else had they been allowed to call it what they're actually singing about in the song. And it's a hilarious song with references to John Wayne, who got upset by it apparently. But very, very amusing song. And I've read some critics just dismiss this song as a sort of cheap Chuck Berry cover, or Chuck Berry style cover. But I think they're wrong. I think it's top-notch Stones and a great guitar solo in the middle and hilarious lyrics and a good sing-along chorus. Number 7, same thing about this song, Brown Sugar. It's an absolute tour de force. I know the lyrics are controversial, particularly these days, but at the time, Jagger was muffling the words. You couldn't really hear what he was saying. The main thing about this song was the guitars and the sound and the drums, and it had to be played loud, and the chorus, everyone would join in on the chorus. I remember it being played at parties and just bringing the house down every time. Number 6, we've got another track from Exile, first track from side 2, Sweet Virginia, country and western song, delightful words with got to scrape that shit right off your shoes at the end of the chorus. Number 5, we've got a lovely ballad from Sticky Fingers, just proving Mick and Keith could write ballads as well as they could write rockers, and Wild Horses is just a beautiful song. Lovely slide guitar, lovely words, lovely singing, good harmonies, just everything to love about that track. Number 4, Jumping Jack Flash, standalone single from '68, absolute tour de force with that superb riff at the beginning. And just one of the greatest intros to any song of all time, and just a great song all in all, with very moody backing vocals. Jumping Jack Flash, it's a gas, that bit. Number 3, into the top 3, Rocks Off, the opening track from Exile. Play this one loud. Mick Taylor and Keith playing in unison the rhythm guitars and just playing their hearts out, and Mick singing "The sunshine bores the daylights out of me," and lyrics like that, even though they're difficult to decipher, as usual. But it's a very strong way to open an album, and probably one of my favourite album openers of all time. Number 2 is also from Exile, and it's on the same side. It's the last track on side 1, Tumbling Dice. Always been a favourite of mine. much prefer the album version to any attempt they did when they tried to do it live, when they sped up the tempo. This is the version to check out, the one on Exile. Brilliant drumming, brilliant harmony vocals, Got to Roll Me. Particularly like the end bit when it goes quiet and the backing vocals come in, and then there's a build up, and then the drums come in, and just a really powerful last minute and a half of that song, and just the whole song with the guitar solo in the middle is just to die for. So we're at number 1 now, and it's from Let It Bleed, and it's the opening track, Give Me Shelter, absolute masterpiece. I was talking of intros to a song. This intro is also in probably my top 10 intros of any song ever, and there's a brilliant guitar solo in the middle of the song. It's brilliantly sung by Mick Jagger, and lovely backing vocalists from Mary Clayton and Mick, Keith and Mary Clayton tackling the vocals. Nicky Hopkins is on piano, and who's playing the, is there a keyboard part in here? Well, I suppose it's a guitar at the beginning, isn't it, which would be Keith. So Brian Jones is not on this track, Bill on bass, Charlie on drums, so Keith's playing all the guitars, and as I say, Mary Clayton, who would later turn up singing with Ringo in the mid-70s, but this was her tour de force, as far as I'm concerned. So that was my top 50 today anyway, if you want to take a screenshot of that, and check out some of the tracks if you're not familiar. If you disagree, that's fine, it's just my choice, and I've just chosen ones which are close to my heart. You'll see a lot of songs didn't make the cut, like Satisfaction, for example, Start Me Up, but it's because I don't go back to those songs as often as I do these. This is my top 50, and I hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.